The movie starts on Staten Island, where we see Venus checking her emails and writing that she got accepted into the California Institute of the Arts, majoring in photography. She starts typing a reply but hesitates to go because she isn't sure if she'll be accepted, and she doesn't want to leave her mom alone. At that moment, she gets a notification that her crush, JB, posted a picture of her on social media. She likes it and then replies. Venus is on a video call with her friend Sydney, and they talk about a bunch of things. Sydney tells her about a new online game called Nerf, and says everyone's obsessed with it. Venus watches a video about it, where a robotic voice explains that users have to complete weird challenges to earn money. When people sign up, they can choose to be either watchers or players. Sydney likes the game, but Venus is skeptical. Later, Venus goes to the kitchen and talks to her mom, Nancy, about college. Nancy doesn't know Venus applied to CalArts. She thinks her daughter will stay on Staten Island and live with her. Venus suggests renting her late brother's room, but Nancy refuses because she still can't get past the grief. After that, Venus goes to a soccer match to take pictures for the school magazine and asks Sydney to help film her for the Nerf game before meeting the cheerleading squad. The team goes through their usual routine, but at the end, Sydney gets surprised when Venus shows off her backside as part of a game challenge and earns money for it. Soon, teenagers all over town start doing crazy stunts to earn money, like eating dog food, hanging from police cars while skating, or jumping off high cliffs. When someone signs up as a player, the game collects all their data and tailors challenges based on it. Watchers pay to watch the videos, follow the competition, and see who makes it to the final. They can even suggest challenges for the players and record them. After the match, Venus and her friend go to a fast food restaurant, and a debate starts about the ethics of the game. Sydney points out that Venus never leaves her comfort zone, she's just a watcher in real life. When Venus protests, Sydney challenges her to go out with JB. Venus refuses, so Sydney tells JB that Venus likes him. Unfortunately, JB says Venus isn't his type, which hurts her feelings. Venus leaves the restaurant upset, screaming as she rides her bike, and messages from her friends only make her angrier. When she gets home, she's crushed, and to prove herself, she decides to join Nerf as a player. The robotic voice explains the rules. Players with the most watchers make it to the finals, and all challenges must be completed to count. If a player fails or chickens out, they're out immediately. Anyone reported faces penalties. The game asks for Venus's fingerprint, and creates a profile using all her personal info online, including her favorite books and bank account details. Her first challenge is to kiss a stranger at a diner for $100. Venus calls her friend Tommy for directions. He warns her that some people have died from the game, but she doesn't believe him. Surely the game would have been shut down if that were true. Tommy explains he learned from the dark web that the game can't be shut down because every new player creates a new server. At the diner, Venus takes a long time choosing someone. The app gives her a time limit. She finally chooses a guy named Ian because he's reading her favorite book. She starts talking about the book to get his attention, then suddenly kisses him while Tommy films her, counting in her head to 10. After the challenge, she checks with Tommy to make sure she got the money. Music starts playing in the diner, and Ian sings and dances on the chairs, looking at Venus. She thinks he's singing to her, but Tommy tells her it's also a game challenge. Ian finishes his challenge, sits with them, and explains that someone gave him the book as part of the challenge. At that moment, Venus and Ian get a new message asking them to go to the city together for $200. Venus refuses, saying she just wanted to do one challenge for fun, and Tommy agrees. Ian comments that Venus only does what her friends tell her, then leaves. Venus feels pressured and runs after him in the parking lot. She tells him she's not into adventures, but he insists she come along. They ride Ian's bike toward the city, crossing the bridge, filming everything along the way. At that time, Sydney was showing off while doing another challenge that involved pretending she had a bad smell, but using the app she gained a lot of fans. Her confidence dipped a bit when she saw that Venus had joined the game and was quickly earning a ton of watchers. After that round ended, Venus and Ian took on a new challenge, splitting up the tasks. Venus's challenge was to try on a dress from a very expensive store. When she enters the store, her mom Nancy gets a notification that their shared account is receiving money under Venus's name. She calls her daughter immediately, but Venus ignores her and focuses on finding the dress. She thinks about taking it off the mannequin, but an employee brings her another copy. Venus rushes to the fitting room and records herself putting on the dress, completing the challenge just in time. She looks in the mirror, impressed by what she sees, and at that moment Ian, who had a challenge to try on clothes too, notices her and films her for his fans. Tommy stays worried about Venus's safety. Venus and Ian joke around and finish dressing, including putting on shoes. When a player named Ty joins the challenge, he takes their clothes from the fitting room for his own challenge. Venus and Ian realize their clothes are gone. At the same time, they receive a $2,500 challenge that requires them to leave the store. The clothes are way too expensive for their budget, so they decide to leave them behind and run off in their underwear. At first, no one notices, but eventually they're spotted, leaving them no choice but to escape, while the crowd watches. This earns them a huge number of fans. On the bike, Ian finds a bag containing the expensive clothes and receipts, so they manage to reclaim it without technically stealing, thanks to one of their watchers, as they head to the next challenge location. Sydney calls Tommy to ask about Venus's intentions and freaks out when she sees Venus among the top players. Soon, Venus and Ian arrive at a tattoo parlor, and Venus has to get a tattoo. Ian chooses the design, looking through many options but not liking any, so he makes one himself and asks the tattoo artist to adjust it. Venus sits in the chair, enduring the needle, while the number of fans watching increases. To distract her, Ian plays a song she likes and tells her the story of his deceased brother. When the tattoo is done, Venus looks at it in the mirror and reflects on it. Meanwhile, Sydney is at a party, noticing that Venus is gaining fans, which makes her even more jealous. May sees all of this and runs out of patience. He decides to contact his hacker friend to get more info about Ian, since he's not visible online. He sends his friend a password to access the system and discovers that Ian has played the game before, and was involved in an incident that killed one of the players. Tommy freaks out and calls Venus to warn her, but she doesn't answer. Ian gets a new challenge. He has to ride a bike blindfolded at 60 miles per hour through New York City, and he needs Venus to give him the correct directions in exchange for $100,000. Venus refuses to guide him, but Ty passes by to take a picture of her with a car sticker. After Ian leaves, he tries to get Venus to do the challenge. In the party, a girl turns on the TV so everyone can watch. Ian places a sticker on his helmet, and the challenge begins. Venus confirms the signal is green, but the driving is unsteady. She yells instructions to help him regain control. With a little pushing and guidance, Venus directs Ian through the streets as he accelerates, reaching a red light, but she tells him to speed up and they pass it just in time. After going through a tunnel, they finish the countdown, and Ian keeps an eye out to avoid hitting a bus. Afterwards, they celebrate and kiss at the party. Sydney becomes extremely jealous, and tells her watchers to give her a better challenge. At that moment, Ty sees her and asks to play with her, but Sydney refuses and gives him her number before leaving. Meanwhile, Nancy calls Tommy, asking if her accounts are being hacked, because she's receiving money from unknown clients. Tommy tells a story about Venus playing online poker and making good money to explain it, keeping her safe from suspicion. Venus and Ian joke on a carousel and get closer by talking about their families. Sydney watches and calls Venus, who doesn't answer. Venus explains to Ian that Sydney always complicates things and uses them to feel superior. This embarrasses Sydney in front of everyone. Now, Sydney's watchers are trying to find her a dangerous challenge. At the party, two guys show up with a ladder. Sydney gets a new challenge. She must walk from one building to another using the ladder. She's drunk and dizzy but tries. She takes her first steps unsteadily and falls on her hands and feet to make the task easier, while everyone films her. To validate the challenge, she must film herself, so she falls again to pull her phone out of her pocket. The crowd shouts and gives her advice, which only makes her more nervous. She drops her phone on the ground. Nerf immediately announces that Sydney failed the challenge and is out of the game. Across the city, many people failed dangerous challenges, like jumping from train stations or trapping themselves in fire. Someone survives a train passing under them without injury, finishing the challenge in first place. The more people fail, the fewer players remain. Later, Venus and Ian arrive at the party, welcomed like celebrities. When Venus learns that Sydney is out, she goes to see her and finds her with JB, which leads to a fight and them leaving each other. Sydney even hits Venus at a sensitive spot when talking about her deceased brother. At that moment, Venus takes on the challenge of completing Sydney's failed challenge for $15,000. Venus is less arrogant than Sydney and only stands for a moment to complete it. She quickly reaches the nearby building, where everyone is celebrating, and Nirvana is in first place. Then Tommy finds her and tells her that her fight with Sydney was set up by Ian because it was his challenge. Venus freaks out and runs out of the party, with Ian chasing her. People keep filming, so Ian takes her into the elevator and explains that things are way more complicated than she thinks, but he can't tell her everything right now. Venus doesn't believe him and is exhausted from all the danger, so she runs out of the building looking for a police officer to explain the game to. But the officer sees no crime happening. The nearby watchers start mocking and reporting, and at the same time, Nancy discovers her bank account has been hacked and calls Venus, who's panicking because Ian took off on his bike. At that moment, Ty appears and apologizes before hitting her so he can complete his challenge. Soon after, Venus wakes up in a storage room, realizing she's now trapped for breaking the rules. She sees that they have complete control over her life and her family, and they prove it by showing important documents on the screen. The only way out of the game now is to win the final round, and to do that, she must take a ferry to Staten Island. Venus knocks on the storage room door to leave and looks around for someone nearby. Suddenly, Ian appears and explains everything to her. Ian and Ty had played Nerf last year in Seattle, and one of their friends died trying to climb something. They went straight to the police, but nobody took them seriously, considering it an accident. Later, Nerf punished them for breaking the rules, ruining their lives and their families' lives. They stole their identities and posted Ian's sister's photos online. In the game, there's a hidden level after the players and watchers levels called Prisoner, where Ian and Ty were trapped. The only way out is to win the final. Venus is now in the same situation. Ian explains that he made a deal with the watchers. They gave him a hard challenge so Ty would end up in third place, allowing Ian and Venus to go to the final. Ian lets Venus win. She's not thrilled about the idea, but he goes to his challenge while she calls Tommy for help. She's also with Sydney, who heard the truth and agreed to help. When the two girls meet, they apologize to each other and discuss the situation. Venus wants to get to the final but also wants to take down the game, so she asks Tommy to hack the Nerf code and reveal all the watchers' identities, giving Sydney a secret mission as part of the plan. At the same time, Ian repeats the challenge that caused him to lose before. The loser must go to a high rooftop and hang from the edge with one hand for 5 seconds while a drone films them. He's terrified but completes the challenge and yells at the camera. Now Ian is in the final. After Sydney finishes her mission, she goes with Tommy to meet the hacker friends working on the open Nerf code. Meanwhile, Nancy discovers the game and calls Tommy, who invites her to the hackers to explain everything. Venus takes the ferry and gets a bag with challenge tools. She sees watchers wearing masks on the train heading to the next location. She arrives at the stadium, and the guard asks for ID, so she shows a gun from her bag. As thousands log in to watch the final challenge, Venus notices many watchers wearing masks. Ian rushes in, and the final challenge begins. They have to hit each other, and whoever hits first wins, with only 20 seconds on the clock. Ian tells Venus to hit him quickly, but she hits the ground instead, so no one wins. The crowd yells, and Venus tries to leave, but the watchers swing in the air to stop her. One removes their mask, revealing Ty, who threatens to hit Ian. When the crowd applauds, Venus jumps between them and calls the watchers cowards, saying they only get courage in groups. Ty dismisses her words, so Venus dares him to hit her. He asks the crowd's approval via phone voting. Everyone votes for Ty to hit Venus, so he goes through with it. Ian grabs Venus as she falls. At that moment, the hackers finish their work, revealing everyone's real name on their phones with a message saying they are all partners in murder. People log out of the stadium immediately, and no servers remain active to keep Nerf running. Ian tries to hit Ty, but Venus suddenly stops him, revealing that this was Sydney's plan from the start. Ty's gun was loaded with blanks, and the blood Venus saw was fake. Now, Ty and Ian can reconcile. In the hideout, everyone celebrates, and the hackers return Nancy's money. After leaving the stadium, Ian admits his real name is Sam, and he and Venus kiss. Soon after, Venus is happy, graduates from the California Institute of the Arts with Ian, and they remain friends with Tommy and Sydney. The movie ends with a thank you message to viewers, encouraging them to comment, like the video, and subscribe to the channel.